like to add to my biography. Probably my most important credential is that I served on the staff of the EMP Commission that Dr. Bartlett referred to earlier. I think the science and physics have been covered pretty well, but I would just like to recap quickly that an EMP that could be catastrophic to the United States could be caused by a nuclear weapon of conventional design. Any nuclear weapon. It doesn't have to be a high-yield nuclear weapon. The Commission found that even a very low-yield nuclear weapon, such as rogue states or terrorists could design, would be sufficient to cause a catastrophic EMP attack against the unhardened critical infrastructures of the United States. Next, there are nuclear weapons of special design, however. Mr. Bartlett referred to the Russian the Russians refer to this as a super EMP weapon, which is designed to produce extraordinarily high EMP fields. And counterintuitively, it doesn't have a very high yield. It's not designed to create a large blast. It's designed to put out gamma rays, which is what causes the EMP effect. It has a very low yield. The EMP Commission was warned by a Russian delegation, first and only time they've ever admitted to a case of proliferation, that the secret of the super EMP weapon might have leaked to North Korea. And they predicted at that time, within a few years, after meeting with the EMP Commission, within a few years, North Korea might be capable of building such a weapon. Because while the theory of it is complex, the technology is not, and that the North Koreans could build this. And a couple of years after that, within a few years after being told by that, in 2006, the North Koreans conducted their first nuclear test, widely declared in the West to be a failure because it had a very low yield. But the seismic signal looks so much like the super, very low yield, but it puts out this fizzle in the seismic signal, which would be the gamma rays coming out. Their 2009 test looked the same. The North Koreans have declared this to be a success, and presumably it is a success because the Defense Intelligence Agency testified to the Senate last month that North Korea is mounting warheads on missiles. It's nuclear warhead on missiles now. Why would they put a failed weapon that needs further development on missiles? So whatever that thing is, it apparently works. So the super and the nuclear weapons of conventional design. Then of course there's Mother Nature that can cause a EMP event by a geomagnetic storm, which are commonplace. They happen every year. 1989, there was a commonplace geomagnetic storm that caused a blackout in the province of Quebec and destroyed a big transformer. But there is this thing we're concerned about that the EMP Commission warned about, as did the National Academy of Sciences subsequently, called a great geomagnetic storm, which is a once-in-a-century phenomenon. The last great geomagnetic storm was 1859. We know these things happen, that they're inevitable, and when they do happen, they will collapse power grids across the entire planet, not just in one country. And we're very concerned about what will happen during the solar maximum, which begins in December 2012 and passes through 2013, because we are completely unprotected, and you get an increased incidence of solar flares and coronal mass ejections during the solar maximum. It's basically like a roulette game. It's basically like a roulette game. A lot of scientists are concerned that the possibility of a great geomagnetic storm will increase during the solar maximum, which happens every 11 years. And last, what we haven't mentioned is there are non-nuclear EMP weapons. Now, these are not sufficiently powerful to take out the whole country, but you could, but they are available to anybody. A madman or a criminal can purchase an industrial EMP simulator, which can be used as a weapon. And in fact, there is one advertised that I usually show in my briefing that's called an EMP suitcase. It's designed to be used just by one person, puts out a very high localized EMP field. But if you know what you were doing, you could throw this thing in the trunk of a car and then park it near a big transformer. These things are not protected. You've probably seen them when you drive down the highway. There are these chain link fences that near the highway, and there are strange large devices. Those are basically what powers the cities. These transformers and skaters are located in there. They're not guarded. They're only protected by a chain link fence. If somebody put one of these EMP simulators in the trunk of a car, knew what he was doing, knew which building to park it near, you could black out a city. So those are the threats, and very real threats. It doesn't cost a lot. The EMP Commission came up with recommendations, we've known for 50 years the technology. We don't need new technology. And to protect the minimum that we should do, in the Commission's view, was to protect the 300 big transformers associated with our major metropolitan areas. If we did that, it would cost. We could do that for 100 to 200 million with an M dollars, and since the Commission estimated that in the absence of EMP protection, given our current state of unpreparedness, a year after an EMP event, 2/3 of the American population would die from starvation, disease, societal breakdown. At least 2/3. The Commission was criticized for actually underestimating the threat by Fritz Ehrmarth, who used to be the chairman of the National Intelligence Council, and says, that had made some good arguments as to why more people would die than that, mainly because Americans are not prepared to survive the way just a generation ago, the Great Generation was survived. I know my parents, for example, having lived through the Great Depression and World War II, they didn't trust the system. They were prepared. They'd never heard of EMP, but they were prepared for anything. My mother was constantly canning food. We had a year's worth of food. And my father knew how to hunt and fish and all of that. Most Americans don't know how to do that anymore. And the Commission assumption was that most people did. So if you subtract those skills, you probably would end up with higher casualties. So 100 to 200 million, or $1 for every life that would be saved, is a bare minimum. That wouldn't solve the whole problem, but it would at least give us a fighting chance to save those 2/3 of the American population. That's the bare minimum that should be done.